Hello, everybody. Dave Cromar here. It is January 13th, 2020. And I just wanted to create a simple video today specific to some of the extreme vaccine propaganda that we're constantly getting shoved in our face. I can't open my phone any day and not see something about how the flu is the worst it's been in decades, which is the exact same headlines I've seen last year and the year before that and the year before that. Every single year, you're going to see the exact same headlines going out. This season's the worst. The flu is so bad. Everybody's dying. And they're going to find that one story of that one kid that really got hurt from it and all these death reports that because the person had the flu, it must have been the flu that killed them. Well, is that really what's happening? Let's take a look at some of the articles and what's really going on. So if we jump into Google here, there's actually a really important vaccine topic that I hope you guys are seeing and paying attention to. And that's the fact that both personal and religious exemptions are being removed and taken away from all of us. It's already happened in California, Mississippi, let's see, I think Maine, Vermont. I think they've gotten rid of some of the exemptions in Washington, and now they're currently going after the religious exemptions in New Jersey. And there's been mass protests. We're talking thousands and thousands of people, you know, carrying their signs and fighting for their individual medical liberty to be able to refuse these dangerous medical procedures. And they're trying to remove our ability to opt out, okay, whether that's a personal belief or a religious belief. For many, the religious, I guess, concern that a lot of people have is the fact that the live viral vaccines like chickenpox, MMR, the shingles vaccine, the rotavirus, they're all cultured in the tissue of aborted fetal cells, right? The fibroblast lung tissue of an aborted fetus from back in the 50s or 60s. These cells have been made immortal, completely are replicating them over and over again. And some really crazy science, if you actually follow the science, is they've been able to do a complete genome profile from a vaccine and found the entire genome of a male with all the genes, 560 of those genes cancerous. These are getting injected into our babies, ourselves. It's unreal. So we have plenty of religious reasons to be opposed to mandatory vaccination, but it goes way beyond religion. I don't care. I mean, this is mandating a medical procedure that we shouldn't have to do, and it's never been proven safe, so on and so forth. So if you look at religious exemption for vaccine, you can find story after story, very recent, and I highly recommend you start following these types of things because if it's not affecting you where you live, it will. Here in Colorado, several bills have been introduced and haven't been able to go through because educated people, more and more of us, are starting to speak out against the fact that there is no safety science for vaccines. There's actually a lot of risk there, and that the infections that we're trying to prevent actually do have benefit for us. Again, start doing your research. That's not the point of this video today. I open my phone every day and I get a different article about the flu, how the flu season's the worst it's been. New Jersey's bracing for the worst flu. We've got 2 predominant flu strains that are hitting kids. And what they're really talking about is influenza type B that's been, as you can see here, what is type B flu virus? It's, sore throat, cough, runny nose. It's the flu. And they're going to talk about how unusual flu virus is hitting children hard, and this season's vaccine is a poor match. Well, duh. Every year it's a poor match. Every single year it's a poor match. The efficacy of the flu vaccine is anywhere from 0 to 10% on average, 30% at best. So the fact that, that every news article every year is pushing the flu vaccine, it's not really accurate information. All it is propaganda and fear to get you guys to go get that flu shot. They're very heavily influenced by the pharmaceutical companies. The media is. One second, my phone's going off. Just want to make sure everything's okay with holding. Looks like we're okay. All right. So let's look at one of these articles. The unusual flu virus is hitting children hard this season, and this season's vaccine is a poor match. I hate seeing images like this. This is abuse. You're actually injuring this child on purpose. Okay, blah, 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 blah. The CDC. According to news reports from the CDC, this season's influenza vaccine is not a close match for the virus. And again, you see this each and every single year. And they're going to go on and talk about what's the difference between type A flu and type B flu and why type B flu is so common right now and the complications that can come about from it. Blah, blah, blah. Again, just pushing a bunch of vaccine and infectious disease scare on you. And okay, mismatch. This mismatch is one of many hypotheses scientists are working with. Oh, yeah, okay. The vaccine should still be useful, even though it's a complete mismatch. They have to continue to push the idea that, well, yeah, we totally are off, but we still want you to get the flu shot because if everyone gets it, that's a $300+ million product or people out there that have to get this product. So it's all about the money. They're going to tell you, although the circulating virus is genetically different from influenza B, they're kind of similar. They're close enough that the vaccines offer some protection. What a joke. This mismatch is one of many hypotheses are working with to explain the season's severe impact on children. Epidemiologists at the CDC Influenza Division report, blah, blah, blah. Again, it's total BS. They're always going to tell you, you still need to get the flu vaccine because it's going to prime your immune system so that you can fight the flu that you are going to get that's a different strain better. And that is a complete and total lie. There's no science that supports that claim. And in fact, the science that does exist would actually state otherwise, that you're confusing your immune system, you're actually suppressing your immune system, and if you get the flu shot, you're actually 4 times or higher more likely to get some type of other respiratory infection like respiratory syncytial virus, Coxsackie virus, enteroviruses, and so on. And that's typically what happens. We don't do any vaccines anymore. But we watch all of our friends and family that do. Most of our family opt out of at least the flu shot. And they get to kind of evaluate for themselves now, well, if we're opting out of flu shot, why are we so passionate about the others? But anyway, as people go out and get their shots, we watch them become sick over and over again. And those that are getting the shot are now carrying the virus and are shedding the virus for a good 3 to 4 weeks. So, you know, the flu isn't a big deal until they start pushing these vaccines, and then all of a sudden everybody's getting sick. Why don't you pay attention and connect the dots? They're also pushing the big death counts about the flu. Now, just because somebody had the flu and then went to the hospital for treatment and died, they're always going to say the flu killed them. It's complete opposite of somebody got a vaccine, had a bad reaction and died. Wasn't the vaccine. Somebody had the flu, had a reaction and died. It was the flu. But was it the flu? Well, let's take a look at what science says, because our body has mechanisms of action to fight off infection in our immune system. You should learn about all the different levels of our immune system. I have lots of playlists on my Fear versus Freedom channel that can talk about fever, that can talk about the immune system. You can learn anatomy and physiology there. So take some time and go over there. But there's a lot of science coming out that says, man, we really don't know much about how our immune system works and the importance of that fever. Anytime you go to the doctor, anytime you go to the hospital, the first thing they're going to do is check your temperature. And if you have any type of fever, they're going to try to get you to take acetaminophen, Tylenol, ibuprofen, Aleve, any of those other ibuprofen brand names, or any other type of nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drug to get you to reduce that fever. What is the consequence of doing that? Isn't fever a part of our immune response? Yes, it is. So let's look at what some of the science talks about that's more recent that's around fever, okay? So here's a study that you can find online. Fever, suppress it or let it ride? It's a great question. While our ability to detect and manage fever has evolved since its conceptualization in the 5th century BC, controversy remains over the best evidence-based practices regarding if and when to treat the physiological derangement in the critically ill. There's two basic fields of thought. Fever should be suppressed because its metabolic cost outweighs potential physiological benefit of an already stressed out host. This is the most misguided philosophy ever. And then there's number two. Fever is a protective, adaptive response that should be allowed to run its course under most circumstances. Yes, absolutely. That's how our body has learned to fight off these pathogens. We can kill them with the heat while protecting the rest of our body. The latter approach, sometimes referred to as the let it ride philosophy, has been supported by several recent randomized controlled trials. Okay, so then this goes further into how mortality rates were actually increased in the ICU by trying to suppress fever and suppress your immune system and not let the body do what it's supposed to do. Okay, here's another study. Targeted temperature management in the intensive care unit. Do we let nature take its course? Again, the more you read through these studies, the more you find out we don't know the answer. In reality, we do, but science hasn't figured it out yet. You let your body do what it's supposed to do. Should we aim to intervene and control fever in a critically ill patient? The answer is not as straightforward, and there's certainly no universal agreement on the subject. The article aims to discuss whether we should override nature and disallow it to take its course, particularly where it appears that this evolutionary response to invading pathogens is actually becoming harmful to the patient. So again, go into these. I think this one, let me just try it. Let's see. Febrile. No. Okay. One of these studies actually goes in and shows how there's really not even a benefit to those that are susceptible to febrile seizures to treating them with Tylenol or ibuprofen and trying to bring the fever down. There's no benefit in correlation of lowering the incidence of febrile seizure. Let's look at this one. Fever management, evidence versus current practice. Fever is a very common complaint in children and is the single most common non-trauma related reason for a visit to the emergency department. Parents are so concerned about fever and its potential complications. The biological value of fever is disputed, and it's being vigorously treated with the belief of preventing complications such as brain injury and febrile seizures. The practice of alternating antipyretics has become widespread at home and on pediatric wards without supporting scientific evidence. The practice of alternating antipyretics. So the instructions you get from your doctor or while you're in the hospital where they're going, okay, we're going to do Tylenol, and in 4 hours we're going to do ibuprofen, and in 4 hours from there we're going to do Tylenol, and then we're going to do ibuprofen with the goal to keep your seizure down. Is that the responsible thing to do? Is that the safe thing to do? What you're going to find is, no, it's not. There is still a significant contrast between the current concept and practice of the scientific evidence. Why is it that the case in such common complaint like fever? The article will discuss significant contrast between the current concepts and practice of fever management on one hand, and the scientific evidence against such concepts and practices. Again, go read some of this information. There's a ton. Some of these are very complex. Some of them go into genetics. Some of them go into hormones. All these different reasons why we could have fever, but the fever serves a purpose no matter what body system is being affected. It has its place, and we don't need to be so afraid of our body's reactions to its current stress, whether that's physical, chemical, or emotional stress. The symptoms that are being presented are your body's proper response. Oh, let's see, what did I have in this one? Pathophysiological basis and consequence of fever. Another one that talks about the risk and benefit of going either way. Now, for those of you that are pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine, I don't care. You might know who Paul Offit is. Paul Offit is a creator of the rotavirus vaccine. Let me just check my phone again, make sure everything's okay. One sec. All right. The case for letting fevers run their course. This is one of the most ironic articles I've ever read because Paul Offit actually dives into some of the science, which is great. And he's talking about how fever really has its place. He says fever isn't an illness. It's the body's attempt to fight illness, right? So when we treat fever with antipyretics like acetaminophen or ibuprofen, we only handcuff an important part of our immune response. That's right. Although it might seem counterintuitive, several studies have shown now that antipyretics increase the severity of infections. The time has come to get over our fear of fever. Okay, this entire uh, paragraph, you could replace acetaminophen and Tylenol with vaccines and fever with infection. Okay, the exact same thing could say, it's time we start getting over our fear of infection and let it ride. Much has been learned about the importance of fever from studies in animals, which can be divided into two groups, ectotherms and endotherms. Ectotherms regulate their body temperature using the environment, for example, lizards, blah, blah, blah. Mammals, on the other hand, are endotherms. To increase your body temperature, our immune system releases chemicals called cytokines, like interleukin 1, 2, and 6, and 8, tumor necrosis factor, and several others, that travel to part of the brain called the hypothalamus and reset the body's temperature to a higher level. Okay, that's our thermostat. To achieve that higher temperature, we shiver, we crawl under the covers, we wear warm clothing, and we shunt blood flow from our arms and legs toward our core, and our temperature goes up. In the mid-1970s, Matthew Kluger, scientist of Department of Physiology in the University of Michigan, performed a groundbreaking experiment. He infected lizards with bacterium called Aeromonas hydrophila. Then he put the lizards in chambers at 38 degrees Celsius, normal lizard temperature, 40 degrees Celsius to lower the fever, and 42 degrees Celsius for a high fever, or a low fever versus high fever. At normal temperatures, 75% of the lizards died. At lower fever, 33% died, and at high fever, 0% died. These findings were later extended to goldfish infected with Aeromonas, mice infected with the Coxsackie bee virus, rabbits infected with Pasteurella, dogs infected with herpes. In every case, animals prohibited from having fever were more likely to suffer and die. Animals prohibited from having fever were more likely to suffer and die. All of these studies proved what had been postulated, that fever was an adaptive, physiological, and necessary part of the immune response. This goes on to talk about how important fever is, right? And then it goes into how these antipyretics prolong the excretion of salmonella bacteria in people suffering from intestinal infection. Children with bloodstream infection, known as sepsis, sepsis is the infection of your blood, or pneumonia, were more likely to die if their temperatures were lowered. Antipyretics prolonged symptoms in patients infected with flu. Prolonged the flu. Made it worse by lowering the fever, okay? Antipyretics prolonged viral shedding and worsened symptoms in volunteers experimentally infected with the common cold virus called rhinovirus. Antipyretics delayed the resolution of symptoms in children with chickenpox. So regardless of the disease, whether it was bacterial or viral, whatever the pathogen, anytime we attempted to lower that fever and prevent that fever from running its course, they were more sick, it lasted longer, they shed the virus more, and many died. So you've got to ask yourself, is the flu killing people or is the intervention? Okay? You go to the hospital, the first thing they do is start trying to bring that fever down, prolonging your sickness and reducing your body's ability to fight and increasing your risk of death. It isn't the flu that's killing everyone, guys. It is the medical intervention. That or your body is fighting other levels of toxicity or already in a weakened state. Now, back to the article. Consistent with these clinical observations, recent studies have shown why fever is so valuable. At higher temperatures, the white blood cells called neutrophils, B cells, and T cells, they all work better. The efficiency of your immune system is magnified exponentially. Each of these components of the immune system is important to resolving infection. Neutrophils kill the bacteria. The B cells make antibodies that neutralize viruses and bacteria. And the T cells kill the viruses, the infected cells. Now, given all this information, why are we so intent on treating fever? Why are we so fever phobic? Well, one reason is that we equate fever with illness, right? I'm sick, I need to get rid of that fever, and then I'll be better. It's not how it works. We assume that if we lessen fever, that we have lessened the degree of illness, when the opposite appears to be true. Another reason is the fear that high fever can cause brain damage. That's not true. Well, to a certain degree. A concern that hasn't held up to scientific scrutiny. Yet another reason is the notion that treating fever will prevent febrile seizures. That's not true either. A phenomenon that, while frightening, doesn't cause permanent harms. As it turns out, antipyretics also don't prevent febrile seizures. Okay? So if you're worried about febrile seizures and you're treating your kids with Tylenol, ibuprofen, aspirin, anything like that, you're not doing them any favors. Okay? They're still going to be just as likely to have that febrile seizure, and yet they're going to be sicker longer. Probably the most common reason for treating fever is that we feel more comfortable when our temperature is normal. Of course we do. Fever increases the basic metabolic rate, causing us to breathe faster, our hearts to beat faster. When we have fever, all we want to do is lie in bed and drink fluids, which is exactly what we should be doing instead of going to work or school and infecting others. Yes, let the symptoms come. Be sick. Be sick enough that you know you need to be in bed and stop being around other people. This will help prevent the spread of the infection to everybody else. That's not how vaccines work. Vaccines, actually, you get infected, it suppresses the symptoms, and you're spreading it everywhere you go. Pharmaceutical companies haven't helped. This is what's so ironic. He is part of the pharmaceutical companies. He developed vaccines, and he will push vaccines over infection all day long. Here, he's actually saying, let this ride. This is so ironic. Pharmaceutical companies haven't helped with ads like, let's get that temperature down. Just what the doctor ordered. And when fever and aches have little Tyler corralled, Tylenol. We are constantly bombarded with the notion that fever is bad and must be reduced or eliminated. Of interest, Hippocrates, who lived around 400 BC, had it right. He believed that disease was caused when one of the four humors, black bile, yellow bile, blood, or phlegm, was produced in excess. Fever, according to Hippocrates, cooked the raw humor, leading to healing. Then in 1899, the German company Bayer invented aspirin. Now, suddenly it became important to treat fever, popularized by that advice. Take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. In the final analysis, we should have listened to Hippocrates. Again, this whole statement at the end, you can replace fever with infection and medicine with vaccines, right? Infection, according to Hippocrates, or blah, 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 let's see. Now, suddenly it became important to treat fever. Now, just because we have vaccines, it's important that we give everybody the vaccine. Instead of just letting them have the infection, letting natural herd immunity take its place, letting the natural lifelong immunity that you come out with at the end of that infection be given to you, your ability to fight other things better after having the infection. Measles helps you fight cancer. Mumps helps you fight cancer. If you've had those infections, you're less likely to have Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's lymphomas and ovarian cancer and many more. So it's funny where he picks and chooses which market to take down and which market to promote. Very interesting. And another article. Again, I'm going to ask the important question here of, is flu killing people? When they say flu deaths, are they really flu deaths or are they medical intervention deaths? And the latter is what is true, my friends. Remember, we are divinely designed human beings. Whether you believe we were made in God's image or whether you believe we evolved here, either way, we are designed to live in harmony with every bacteria, microbe, and virus on this planet as long as we are taking care of our bodies, giving it proper nutrition, and avoiding toxins. Check this out. Fever-reducing medications may aid the spread of influenza. This is a Canadian study. Contrary to popular belief, fever-reducing medication may inadvertently cause more harm than good. Research from McMaster University has discovered that the widespread use of medications that contain fever-reducing drugs may lead to tens of thousands more flu cases and more than 1,000 deaths attributed to the flu. Okay? What they're saying is it's not the flu that's killing people, it's the fever reducer. These drugs include ibuprofen, acetaminophen, acetylsalicylic acid. When they have the flu, people often take medication that reduces their fever. No one likes to feel that miserable. But it turns out that our comfort might be at a cost of infecting others. Again, what is the cost? That's what I always ask. Whether it's fluoride for your teeth, well, what's the cost? Brain damage? Whether it's vaccines to prevent the measles, what's the cost? Brain damage, autoimmune disease, so many other things. What's the cost? Said lead author David Earn, an investigator with the Michael G. DeGroote Institute for Infectious Disease Research. Because fever can actually help lower the amount of virus in a sick person's body and reduce the chance of transmitting disease to others, taking drugs that reduce fever can increase transmission. We've discovered that this increase has significant effects when we scale up to the level of the whole population. People often take or give their kids fever-reducing drugs so that they can go to work or school. They may think that the risk of infecting others is lower because their fever is lower. That's not true. And that's something that people, oh, I haven't had a fever in 24 hours. I'm okay to go back. BS. If you still have symptoms, you're still infecting other people. You are still shedding that virus. So it says, in fact, the opposite may be true. The ill people may give off more virus because your fever has been reduced. The research assembled information from many sources, including experiments on human volunteers and on ferrets, which are the best animal model for human flu. They then used a mathematical model to compute how the increase in the amount of virus given off by a single person taking fever-reducing drugs would increase the overall number of cases in a typical year, or in a year when a new strain of flu caused a flu pandemic. The bottom line, the most important part of this article here, is that fever suppression increases the number of annual cases by approximately 5%, corresponding to more than 1,000 additional deaths from influenza in a typical year across North America. And I bet the numbers are even worse than that. And this isn't just for flu, okay? If you start following the science, you'll see that when somebody has the measles, if they don't go running to their doctor and they just kind of ride it out, let that fever take its course, let the rash take its course, let the body fight it off, they're okay, okay? You support it, vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D. You do what you can to give your body the tools it needs to fight that infection. You go to the hospital or the doctor and they start giving you fever reducers, antivirals, antibiotics, you increase your risk of death exponentially. That is where the deaths come from. That is sadly what's happening in Samoa as we speak. Okay. The family physician agrees with the researcher's conclusion. As always, Mother Nature knows best. Well, that's a good physician. As always, Mother Nature knows best. Fever is a defense mechanism to protect ourselves and others. Fever-reducing medications should only be taken to take the edge off discomfort, which means don't take it at all. Be discomfort. Have discomfort. Be uncomfortable. It's okay. You're sick. You'll get better. Not to allow people to go out into the community when they should stay at home. People are often advised to take fever-reducing drugs, and medical texts state that doing so is harmless. That's false. These views need to change. Anyway, there's a lot of articles like this, and I actually have some great playlists in my Fear versus Freedom channel. If you go over there, I have close to 70 different playlists, and fever is one of them. We don't fear fever in my home. If you've seen my social engineering video toward the end, we talk about how we handle sickness and disease in my home. We don't have any non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs in our home. We don't use them. We let the fever ride. Just over a year ago in February, we all got the flu. Pretty bad case of the flu. Me, Holden, Carter, Kenzie, everyone but Mandy. Okay. Interestingly enough, Mandy is the only one of us who still has her tonsils. Everyone else got the flu. She didn't. One reason why could be the fact that her tonsils and adenoids are still in place, which help, they're a frontline defense of your lymphatic system and actually help capture viruses and bacteria from entering your respiratory system. So don't take them out. Anyway, all of our fevers went over 105 degrees. That's about 41 degrees Celsius, so super high. None of us had any issues. In fact, Holden's seizures did not increase at all during that flu, during that whole week, during those increased temperatures. Our body temperatures all got to about 105.3. I think Kenzie's went a little bit higher. But guess what? We all came out of it just fine. No running to the doctor, no medication. We relaxed. We stayed hydrated. It was fantastic. No, it was uncomfortable for sure. But on the other end of it, fantastic. We're all healthy. And now acute infection, acute fever-inducing infection is fantastic for your immune system. Helps you build up the ability to fight cancers and all kinds of other things. So, point of this video, learn how to read beyond the headlines and do your own research, okay? When you're getting bombarded every day with the flu is killing thousands, no, thousands of people are getting the flu. One, from all the flu shots that people are getting and spreading that virus all over the place. Two, natural infection of the flu is infecting people. So yes, people have the flu. That is true. Flu deaths, total BS. In no way do they know that the flu actually caused those deaths. What caused those deaths more than likely is the medical intervention. So you better be careful. You better learn and do your research, because the more you study, the more you realize you have nothing to fear if you live a healthy life. If you know that you're making the proper choices dietarily and hygiene-wise, what you're exposing yourself to, I don't fear any of those things. I don't fear any of it. We don't use antibiotics. The only time we did was when Holden had aspirated from his seizure over a year and a few months ago, and he got pneumonia. And that pneumonia infection triggered status epilepsy. And that was about to kill him, and we had to do a trauma level decision. Okay, it wasn't because we were uncomfortable, because we had tested positive for flu. We don't need to do any of that stuff. We ride it out, we eat well, we get better. We stay far away from antibiotics. Just one round of antibiotics will destroy your gut microbiome. All those important bacteria and microbes that are you and your health are being killed off, and it takes up to 2 years to try to even get some rebalance of proper bacteria. It's affecting your mental health, it's affecting your hormones, it's affecting your gut, it's affecting everything. So be careful with those medical interventions, guys. Holy cow, I talk too much. There's another big video. Anyway, flu, fever, and death. Well, what is the cause of these flu deaths? Probably not the flu. Probably the medical intervention. Trust your body. Trust your divine design. Trust yourself and start putting yourself first and feeding your body and giving your body all the clean tools it needs to fight the infection itself. Hope you learned something. Love you. Check out the playlists on the Fear vs. Freedom channel. There's so much there. I know there's something there to help you out. Till next time.